world is talking about it.
It's Goliath. He's so big and scary. What chance does David have? Today, Davids all over the world are crushed by Goliath government.
Hundreds of riot police knocked activists to the ground.
Beer makers, farmers, entrepreneurs. Goliath says
they're not properly regulated.
Goliath takes some of their homes.
It's not fair. It's not right. But there's no telling when this nightmare will end.
Can David defeat Goliath? That's our show tonight.
And now, John Stossel.
Today in America, Goliath no longer looks like that. These days, he's more likely to wear a tie and carry a clipboard. The Davids he attacks are mostly entrepreneurs who have the nerve to try to make a buck running a business. Hairdressers, yoga instructors, dentists, tour guides, flower sellers. Most anyone who goes into business is soon surprised to find himself up against a bureaucrat who says, "No, you may not, unless you first obey all our rules and give us lots of money." Some of those Davids are fortunate to find help from a law firm that takes their case for free. That's the Institute for Justice. Its lawyers sue the government when government really crosses the line. One of those lawyers is Jeff Rose. You sue the government when bureaucrats impose these licensing rules. But, you know, most Americans like licensing. They think it, we license dogs, we license drivers. They think it makes us safer.
You know, that's just not true. And it's
not true that they like it or that it makes us safer.
They don't like us, and it doesn't make us safer. That's a myth that's right up there with Bigfoot. There's not a lick of empirical evidence that shows that licensing makes us safer, provides us with better products or better service.
But it just makes sense. You license a doctor, you make sure he knows what he's doing, or a dentist, or a flower seller. What if they deliver flowers that are about to die and the party...
Calamity. Just who can imagine it? But tell you what. Nobody in America,
for a doctor, it could be a calamity.
Nobody in America has ever gotten a bad flower or even had an issue with a doctor and said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to spearhead a licensing movement. You know where licensing comes from? Licensing comes from the regulated industries themselves. And they love licensing because it is a barrier to entry. And when you create barriers to entry, what you do is you drive prices up and you keep people out. You clobber competitors and you funnel money out of consumers' wallets.
Give me an example.
Sure. So how about my clients? The casket-making monks live across Lake Pontchartrain outside of New Orleans, and they hand-make caskets, and all they wanted to do was sell them to the faithful. And the state of New Orleans...
Selling a box.
That's right, just selling a box. The state of Louisiana says, well, you guys are criminals. That's a criminal conspiracy. Why? Because only state-licensed funeral directors were allowed to sell caskets, boxes. You can't keep people from selling boxes just to make established funeral directors rich.
So it wasn't the politicians who on their own did this. It's the established funeral directors who go to government and get Goliath to push the little guy out.
Tell you what, the monks aren't litigious. They're men of God. They're placid. They're peaceful. And what they tried to do in 2008 and 2010, they went to their legislators. And both times they were clobbered by the funeral industry lobby.
They're organized.
That's right.
And rich.
Rich. And you cannot get... Like, the ordinary citizen cannot go to the government, plead, and get the law changed. Special interests can't, and that's why we need the Constitution to protect us.
Increasingly, his institute now fights governments when they confiscate property from people accused of breaking the law. This is called civil forfeiture, which sounds boring, but it's really outrageous, as this video explains.
Welcome to the forfeiture machine. Civil forfeiture is when police and prosecutors seize property they suspect is connected to a crime. If you are charged with a crime, the government must prove your guilt and provide you an attorney if you can't afford one. But in the upside-down world of civil forfeiture, it's your property that gets charged, and you must prove that it isn't guilty. Nowhere is the civil forfeiture machine more active than in Philadelphia.
What's happening in Philadelphia?
What the police do in Philadelphia is if they think property is connected to a crime, whether you yourself are guilty, they don't even have to charge you, much less convict you of a crime. They can take it. They take people's houses. They take people's houses because a relative may have gone out in the street and sold a tiny amount of drugs. And the police will swoop in and they'll want to seize the house. And we're putting a stop to it.
And, well, in some places you are. It's still going on nationwide. And
That's right.
Goliath, in this case, isn't just trying to punish people they consider criminals. They have this extra incentive.
That's right. When the police seize things, they get to keep the money. They can use it for salaries. They can use it for trips. And I'll tell you what, if you look at the way police behave, you know, you could do one of two things as a police officer. You could seize a car full of drugs, or you can let the drug dealer sell the drugs and seize a car full of money. So which sides of the highways do you think police set stings up on? They set up stings on the side of the highways where they know the drug dealers are leaving town with cars full of money, not the sides where the drug dealers are coming into town with cars full of drugs.
Now, if a criminal does bad things and gets due process and is convicted, then I don't care if he loses property. But with civil forfeiture, innocent people get punished.
Meet Jackie. Jackie lives in a modest house with her 3 grandchildren. One day, the police arrested Jackie's oldest grandson outside her home for selling a small amount of marijuana. There were no drugs inside, and Jackie has never been in trouble with the law. Yet Philadelphia now wants to forfeit and sell Jackie's home. The prosecutor asks Jackie if she wants to settle by agreeing to give up her home in exchange for half the sales price. Worn down, Jackie reluctantly accepts. It's not fair. It's not right. But there's no telling when this nightmare will end.
She gives up her home because she's worn down. I shortened the video so you don't really understand why she's worn down. Explain.
They have this sort of weird court where they just make you keep coming and coming back and coming again. Sometimes they ask for documents. Sometimes they ask for something new. Whatever. They just make you keep coming. And one day they'll say, I'll tell you what, we'll give you your property back, but we want half of it. And these people don't have lawyers. They're not sophisticated. And so they shrug their shoulders and say, whatever we can get.
And if they miss one meeting, they've lost one of these court hearings.
That's right. And it can go on for a year, it can go on for 2 years. And so one of the things we're doing in our lawsuit in Philadelphia is not just attacking policing for profit as fundamentally unconstitutional, but getting rid of these kangaroo courts that are run by the prosecutors themselves.
And you represent Jackie. She already lost her house?
Yes.
So how can you help?
Well, we have other clients, and what we're moving on in Philadelphia is to get property back. We want to break the locks off the homes and give the homes back to the people, and that's what we're doing.
Last case, an Arkansas orthodontist offers to clean teeth.
Yeah, that's right. So he's an orthodontist. His staff cleans teeth every day, and so he thought they're low-income families with kids who don't have insurance and they don't get dentistry every day. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to offer them cleanings for 1/3 the price. Well, in swoops the state dental board and says, if you clean teeth, we're going to take your orthodontist license away. So he's the most prominent orthodontist in the state. He's got 100 employees, and the government says, we're going to take your license if you keep giving safe, inexpensive cleanings to low-income people.
And they say, we're not against, it's not that his price is low, but they only swooped in after he lowered the price.
Exactly. And that tells you something about what the government is really interested in and the kind of interests that are driving the government.
Thank you, Jeff. Now, let's hear from some other entrepreneurs, some Davids who were not lucky enough to get a free lawyer from the Institute for Justice. In Virginia, a woman who runs a farm was shocked when environmental inspectors came to her house and demanded to search inside all of the house, even closets. This woman is one of the inspectors.
I don't want to get into an argument about this. I'm asking if I can look in the closet. It's a yes or no question. Is there a reason is there something in it that I can't see? Well, it has to do with individuals' personal rights and property rights.
Yeah, I would think in America, individuals ought to have those rights. The farmer is Martha Boneta. She's joined here by Marty Kotis, who runs a brewery and restaurants in North Carolina. But then Marty had the nerve to try to sell his own beer at his own restaurants. And state regulators told you, no, you may not?
Yeah, there was actually a prohibition we weren't aware of that said you couldn't own a brewery and a restaurant.
And this is an old Prohibition-era law that they say, this is to protect the customers.
Right. They say it's to protect the public, but it's really to protect the distributors.
And they have friendly relationships with the politicians.
Absolutely. They're one of the largest lobbyists in the nation.
And I noticed that you've taped out something on this bottle here. This is the stuff pig pounder.
Pig pounder, yes.
Sort of an ugly name, but I guess if people want it. What are you taping out? What's that about?
So we have on the back this this kind of list of the different restaurants, and in North Carolina that's not allowed on a beer bottle, but if it were a wine bottle, it's allowed.
You've spent $100,000 on lawyers trying to solve this?
And we're not done yet.
Martha, you bought the property that's now your farm from an environmental group, basically,
Correct,
right?
yes.
Explain.
And, you know, it's not unusual in rural areas, families will acquire properties that have agricultural easements on them. And in my case, our family purchased an easement that has an agricultural easement on it, and the environmentalists that hold the easement have become like a government by proxy and have done these very invasive, abusive inspections. They wanted to install 24/7 video surveillance cameras to spy on my family and friends to see what we were doing every day.
Why? You must have made them mad.
You know, what they've done is exceeded their authority. And, you know, when farmers agree to these easements, they don't agree to have their closet inspected, their toilets and bathrooms, to have their laundry photographed, to have their personal private possessions photographed. This particular land trust really has violated and trespassed, and it far exceeded you know, anything that would permit them to do this, because, you know, my question is, what does what's in my closet have to do with the environment or conservation?
It's not just this environmental group. They get cozy with the government.
Exactly.
And the county came in and found you in violation for having a birthday party for 10-year-old girls.
Yes, and, you know, it was my childhood dream to be a farmer, and we worked really hard to get the farm, and I never dreamed in a million years that there would be miles and miles of red tape and regulation. And I had a birthday party for 8 10-year-old little girls, and the next thing I knew, I had a threatening violation from my county that threatened us with $15,000 a day in violations, and that we would need to have a site plan, a special exception permit, an administrative permit, full-blown hearings, in order to, among other things, be able to sell what we produced on the farm, to have a birthday party, or even to carve pumpkins in our pumpkin patch.
Because part of your farm is a tourist attraction. I see you've got emus here. I assume you don't sell emu meat?
No, but we do sell their emu eggs. We have over 285 animals, and, you know, one of the greatest joys of my life has been bringing the public and the community to the farm to experience a small family working farm. We
Sheep,
have,
ducks, cows, bees. You're a beekeeper.
I'm a beekeeper. We have llamas and alpacas and chickens and sheep and goats.
But you charge money for things.
I do, and you know, being able to sell what you produce on the farm, the fruit of your labor, that goes back since the beginning of time, and it's such an important part of our heritage. And it was just so devastating and heartbreaking to have the county come in and shut us down for doing what farmers have been doing since forever.
3 armed sheriffs showed up?
Yeah, the zoning administrator sent 3 armed sheriffs to interrogate students that were volunteering on our farm. They were learning about animal husbandry, learning about our harvest.
What do you mean to interrogate?
They wanted to know what they were doing on our farm. They collected their names and their phone numbers, wanted to know where they lived, and, you know, asked them a series of questions. And it's, you know, it is a private property working farm, and we should be able, as a family, to have anybody we want to come visit. And if it's students volunteering, what business is that of the government to intervene? I
would think no business, and maybe that's why Martha's story has kind of a happy ending. Some people were outraged enough by what happened to her. One wrote a protest song about how she sold good products until
the day the county came and tried to shut her down. And it's ho, hey, ho, let's strike a blow for freedom.
So pushback from the public did eventually strike a blow for freedom. The Virginia legislature passed a special law making it clear that if the zoning rules allow farming, you're also allowed to make money from your farm.
Absolutely.
So you've won.
Well, you know, it's really hard to be a family farmer, and most family farmers just want to be left alone to work hard and make ends meet and be viable on the land, and this bill gets them a little bit closer to achieving that with little government intervention.
Just a little bit closer doesn't solve the problem?
It doesn't, unfortunately. It really doesn't, because there are still barriers, but it certainly prevents the county from coming in and requiring all kinds of permits and hearings and thousands of dollars in fees.
So you know about this. I now know.
Yes.
Marty, you were surprised when you just made beer and thought, I've got restaurants, I'll sell my beer at my restaurant.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. You know, I'm a free market guy, and I believe that rules should only exist if they serve the public, and I can't think of how the public is served from this.
Me neither. Thank you, Martha, Marty. To join this discussion, please follow me on Twitter at FBN Stossel. Use the hashtag Goliath, or like my Facebook page so you can post on my wall. Coming up, how Goliath tries to crush David even when the service offered by David is obviously much better.
We have to pay big money for licenses. We have to get fingerprinted. We have to have commercial insurance.
She's upset about ride-sharing companies like Uber. Uber takes away some of her customers but doesn't follow all the regulations in her town. Nevada's response to that was to ban Uber. Now, it's pretty weird to call Uber a David. The company's been valued at up to $40 billion. That sounds like a Goliath, but the truth is, unlike government, Uber can't use force. The company got big only because it's better. Customers prefer it. They voluntarily choose its price and convenience. In response, government regulators ban it. It's banned in Thailand, Spain, Massachusetts, and Nevada, because Uber doesn't follow all of government's rules.
The government really needs to, draw a line.
This is creating a situation where it's a free-for-all, where they can operate how they want, charge what they want, do whatever routes they want.
Yeah, and what's wrong with that? If the customer doesn't like it, they don't have to choose Uber. And even though Goliath says we need all these regulations to keep you from being ripped off, it's not like their endless rules stop rip-offs. Nevada's politicians who banned Uber have a cozy relationship with the existing taxi industry. And for years, tourists have complained Las Vegas cabbies rip us off by taking us to the Strip by a roundabout route. I learned more about this from a blog post by Blake Ross. He was the founder of Firefox. He writes that a cabbie ripped him off, and that added about $10 to the fare. It turns out that 1 in 3 cabbies do that in Las Vegas. Undercover cops tested them. Goliath then responded the way governments usually do. They came up with complex rules and warnings. Ross calls it a 5-point plan. Plan A, people with guns. Taxi police set up a roadside checkpoint. Cops stopped cabs at random and offered to prosecute drivers who took inefficient routes. In other words, the government slows you down to make sure your driver doesn't. But it didn't work. Tourists didn't want to spend their Vegas vacation in court. The authorities' chief investigators said only 3 passengers chose to press complaints. They just wanted to get to their hotels. Duh. So, Plan B, big signs. Each enumerates proper taxi fares for every conceivable trip, using approximately twice as many words as it took Ronald Reagan to tear down the Berlin Wall. And almost as long it took the taxicab authority 2 years to put up the signs. All things take time in government, said the administrator. Even then, that effort proved pointless. Only 7% of people read the signs. So Goliath implemented Plan C, the big spreadsheet. This didn't do the trick either. Cheating was worse than ever. So Plan D, the PDF. Goliath asks you to print out the long route voluntary witness statement. Complete the sworn affidavit in the view of a public notary. Ross offers a few insider tips to keep in mind when taking a cab in Vegas. Carry a desktop computer, a printer, envelopes, stamps, a fax machine, and a notary. Note the driver's full name, permit number, and physical appearance. If you don't have this information memorized, just ask the driver while you're locked in the taxi with him. Explain you're trying to have him fired. Remember also to bring $10 to pay the notary so that you can complain that you were overcharged by $10. Ross actually tried out the government system when he was ripped off in Vegas, but he never heard back from anyone. That's Goliath at work. Finally, government's Plan E. The Nevada Taxicab Authority voted to convene a committee. The committee will draw up guidelines for a software package designed to let the authority track cab movements. Nevada estimates that'll cost about $6 million per year, and you'll pay for this through an increase in your taxi fares, which are already about double the price of an UberX ride, which Goliath banned in Nevada. They banned Uber, but Uber already has a solution to the problem of drivers who cheat. On the Uber app, customers give that driver just 1 star. Within hours, Uber adjusts your fare. If the driver keeps scamming people, he's fired. Simple. Better. But Vegas officials, Goliath, kicked the company out of town. Government is force. Government can't always win, even when it's wrong. Next, a man who was arrested after taking pictures of this arrest. When people hassle the police, who's Goliath? Who is David?
Help me, please! Let me out of the car! Can you take video of this?
That's video of Austin, Texas police officers pulling a woman out of a car. A bystander also took these still pictures of the event. He thought the police were abusing the woman. So who's right? Who is David and who is Goliath in that situation? Did the police abuse that woman? Or did the man who confronted the police abuse underpaid civil servants who risked their lives trying to keep us safe? With police officers being shot, it's not always clear who's David and who's Goliath, but Antonio Beeler says it's clear to him. He was the bystander in that video, and you say there's no question, the police are Goliath.
Yeah, they can commit crimes, they can kill people, and they can get away with it.
Well, commit crimes, they can't get away with that.
Well, they have in my case. They abused a woman who had not committed any crime. They ended up arresting her.
Well, they were pulling it. It was a DUI arrest.
But she was the passenger. She had not committed any crime. She was not suspected of committing a crime. And they pulled her out of the vehicle. They abused her. And then I tried to ask questions and take pictures. So they came up to me, got on my face, started pushing and shoving me, and they falsely charged me with a felony crime that I did not commit.
And this is where I think your argument is best, that our best protection against the people we empower to imprison us is the camera. And it's legal everywhere in America to photograph the police doing their jobs. But lots of people get arrested for that, and the cops who do it, to my knowledge, never get punished. I mean, in your case, the Austin police said, "You spat on me. You're resisting arrest."
Well, that's right. And even though we had numerous witnesses step forward to say that that was a lie, and we had audio and video, they continued to push my charges against me. It took 15 months for it to go to a grand jury, at which time they indicted me on 4 new charges.
And 2 years, finally, you got a jury trial, and jury said, let him go.
Well, it was actually 2 years and 9 months before we finally took it to trial, and it took them that long to actually give us the dash cameras. But yeah, I was found not guilty. But
and one of the Austin cops testified for you, actually.
That's right. That's right. He crossed the thin blue line, and he was then fired once he told his commanders that he was going to testify.
You now call yourself a police accountability activist.
I do that on the side. My main job is education, but yes, I'm a police.
You've been arrested a bunch of times.
I've been arrested.
Taking pictures.
Yeah, I've been arrested 5 times, and every single time I was trying to film the police.
To defend the police. They go on to these situations, and often they are scared. They don't know who's in the car, if they're armed. Some people hate the police. Cops have been killed. They're being nervous and careful.
Yeah, well, cops have a relatively safe job. It's safer than pilots, construction workers, sanitation workers.
Yeah, I think we have a chart on this, and this is remarkable because they often say we should get paid more because our job is much more dangerous, but it's much less dangerous than fishing or farming or being a roofer,
right? And
garbage man.
And you know, every life that is lost is tragic, but police officers, like soldiers, actually volunteered for jobs that carry the risk of violence. The people they abuse never volunteered for that.
They do, though, go into the situation scared. The fisherman and the logger don't. There is an extra element of fear in police work.
Well, I think a lot of that fear is self-generated. They continually tell themselves that they're victims, that they're the ones who are being targeted.
You say there's certain things the public should know when dealing with a police officer.
By filming the police, you can help save a life. You can provide that evidence which will help exonerate an innocent person. And the act of filming police actually changed the behavior of the police to where they are more likely to respect the dignity of the people that they're interacting with.
You have to be careful not to interfere with the arrest, but if you keep your distance, you have every right to take pictures.
Yeah, and the distance is, it depends on the situation. When we film police in highly crowded areas downtown, we'll get as close as 10 feet to them, but there's people who are walking within a couple feet of them, but they don't ever seem to be concerned or scared of the random passerby. They only tend to be scared of the people with cameras.
You have a right to film the police. Thank you, Antonio. Coming up, how libertarians are mocked by Goliaths like Bill O'Reilly.
I know you're a libertarian, but don't be a loon.
Thank goodness for the Environmental Protection Agency. America's a better place to live because their rules forced us to clean the air and water. Good work, EPA. But now I think EPA should stand for enough protection already. The air is cleaner than it's been in 60 years. But Goliath never stops. The EPA still has 16,000 bureaucrats who always want to do more. Their biggest target now is the coal industry. Here's what candidate Barack Obama said to the editorial board of a newspaper.
If somebody wants to build a coal-powered plant, they can. It's just that it will bankrupt them because they're going to be charged a huge sum.
And now that he's president, his EPA has moved to do that. The Davids in this story are people like Darren Old Coyote. He's leader of Montana's Crow Nation. And Darren, your tribe members dig coal out of the ground?
Yeah, for the last 40 years, we've been mining coal on a reservation. We own about 9 billion tons of coal, and we've been mining for the last 40 years.
Now, coal does produce lots of greenhouse gases. If you worry that global warming is a real problem, and it might be, what you do is the biggest part of that problem. So maybe the president's right and you guys should just stop.
Well, if there's an alternative for us right now, with a 47% unemployment rate on a reservation, without coal in the picture, in the mix, we'll be, basically almost 100% unemployment rate on a reservation. 13,600 tribal members on a reservation, and for the last 40 years, it's been our bread and butter.
And I was startled by what the EPA said when you went to them and said, this is our bread and butter. They said, get some welfare programs?
Well, we went to the EPA back in 2006. They wanted to shut down the mine for high sulfur content, and we went to their, the agency, and they said, we're going to shut down the mine. You can go to the Department of Interior and look for welfare programs that you can utilize. We're not here for handout. We want to be self-sufficient as a tribe. We want to, utilize our natural resources to help our people. And we don't want to go to the government, ask for handouts, and that's not who we are, and that's not what we're about to do. And the EPA is not giving us the alternative to, provide for our families.
When President Obama released the proposal for the new EPA rules, he said, people like you are special interests who exaggerate the harm regulation will bring.
Special interests and their allies in Congress will claim that these guidelines will kill jobs and crush the economy. Let's face it, that's what they always say.
You're exaggerating.
We're not special interest groups. We are, a group of people that are trying to make a living off coal and, mining of coal.
And I look at these pictures of what you do. People say strip mining destroys the earth. We ought to get rid of it.
Well, for the last, 20 years, Soliga Mine has been, the reclamation work out there they've been getting awards for having great reclamation work out at the mine.
Reclamation means you restore the land.
Yeah, restore the land. If you go out there, you'll find, wild game, deer, antelope, elk.
Looks
running
good,
around on these lands yeah, it's better than it was before, and a lot of people have this,
better than before.
Yeah, better than it was because we put in a native plants, all the animals go to the coal mine, and you'll have deer running around in the pit, and a lot of times the reclamation is better work than what it was before.
Thank you, Darren Old Coyote. I hope the Crow Nation finds a way to prosper without Interior Department handouts. Coming up, a Goliath nastier than the EPA, a communist government.
Hundreds of riot police knocked activists to the ground and dragged dozens away.
In America, Goliath often crushes opportunity, sometimes arrests people unfairly, but we at least get to vote for our Goliath. In some other countries, David can't even do that.
In Hong Kong, violence flaring up again as police go head-to-head with pro-democracy demonstrators.
Hundreds of riot police knocked activists to the ground and dragged dozens away.
We just want a democracy and a fair voting of choosing our chief executive of Hong Kong.
They want to vote for their leader. Where can Davids in the rest of the world get help when they want the rights that so many of us take for granted? Well, they can turn to this group.
Welcome to the Atlas Network. Today there are more than 400 organizations, and that's just the beginning. We want every community to have a credible, independent think tank promoting the ideas of liberty. We operate not only in English and Spanish, but in more than a dozen languages total, in more than 80 countries.
Brad Lips is the CEO of Atlas Network. You don't run these think tanks, you just support them.
That's correct. Atlas Network trains, supports, fosters collaboration among more than 400 organizations worldwide that hold up these principles of individual liberty, free enterprise. You can imagine that in some countries, in Venezuela, in China, in Afghanistan, the people that are attracted to this work are putting at risk their lives, their fortune, their sacred honor, very much like our founding fathers.
And I know you have people who sometimes smuggle in the works of Milton Friedman and subversive books into these countries?
True. Back in like the before the fall of the Iron Curtain, there was some very heroic activity that went on in getting materials into what was then the Soviet Union. Now we can operate a little bit more freely in most parts of the world.
In China?
Well, China is a very interesting case. Right now, one of our partners is headed to jail for doing the kind of work that you and I would think is patriotic work, for working in civil society to put forward a very optimistic view of where the Chinese future should be. But what we have in China is a Goliath, to use your very apt metaphor here, that doesn't want competing visions of what the future of China is.
So let's talk about Hong Kong, right next to China, which was independent, run by the British, until they made a deal to turn it over to the Chinese. And the Chinese said, well, it'll be special. We'll let it have capitalism, and eventually we'll let them vote for their leaders.
The citizens of Hong Kong are supposed to be able to vote for their own chief executive in 2017. China's now saying, well, you can vote, but only among our hand-selected nominees. So
why would anybody have believed them in the first place?
Well, I mean, in certain respects, the basic law has been upheld. There's this idea of two systems, one country, and some of what has made Hong Kong special, the economic liberties that have made it sort of a beacon of capitalism to the world, have largely remained in place. It's very exciting, I think, to see so many average citizens in Hong Kong taking to the streets, recognizing that what they've had is special, recognizing that they don't want to just be another part of communist China.
And recognizing that they risk their safety and their futures by protesting.
Correct.
And there are a few entrepreneurs who risk their freedom and fortunes to fight Goliath. One in Hong Kong is media tycoon Jimmy Lai. Here's a CNN reporter holding a copy of one of his newspapers that ran the headline, "Don't be a slave." The reporter asked Lai why he chose that headline.
We want to have the freedom. We want to have the democracy that we are entitled to, and that's what we are fighting for.
So he's gutsy. They could do what Putin has done to a bunch of tycoons.
Right. I mean, Jimmy Lai is just a hero. He was born in China, had nothing, says that he received a chocolate bar from a stranger instead of loose change when he was trying to carry bags in a train station. The taste of chocolate made him realize there was a better future out there than what existed in China. So he emigrated as a child to Hong Kong, worked his way up, built a company, became sort of the Rupert Murdoch of Hong Kong. And it's impressive to see him so principled in his advocacy for free markets that he's taking this very public stand now.
And he also gives money to the Occupy Central movement. I hate that they use that Occupy term because the Occupy movement in America is often so stupid.
Right.
And libertarians have some second thoughts about putting all our eggs in this movement because it's just about voting.
Right. You know, the organization that we work with in Hong Kong is called the Lion Rock Institute, and they've been very focused on economic policy, those types of reforms. They think this is sort of a distraction.
It's really what makes people prosper.
And that's really what has made Hong Kong so special. There is an undercurrent to the Occupy Central movement that's also about trying to remove inequality and some of these things that can actually empower Goliath when it's misused by the government.
Russia. Certainly, Putin is the Goliath of our time.
Right. Well, when you talk to our friends in Ukraine, they certainly see Vladimir Putin as the external Goliath that threatens them. You know, he seized the Crimea and now is really invested in trying to foment conflict, trying to create instability so that the Ukraine will fail. You know, he's kind of like a child that sees a toy he can't have and wants to see it destroyed rather than have it enjoyed by someone else. The real challenge for the Ukraine's current reformers, they elected a president in October that was probably the best choice on the ballot.
But they have a long history of Goliath nastily shutting people down.
A history of incredible corruption and cronyism that's going to be difficult to reverse. When Yanukovych left power last year, it became sort of a tourist attraction, his presidential palace, because it was such a glaring example of how he had treated the country like his own piggy bank. He had created, next to all of the luxury automobiles at his palace, there was his own personal zoo with an ostrich and just kind of absurd things like that. Whether the current leadership can find the political will to undertake the kinds of reforms that Poland undertook in 1989 and the Republic of Georgia in 2005, it's tough medicine that can hurt in the short term, but it's really the only way to clean out a corrupt system. It requires a lot of political will. Hope they can do it.
Finally, Cuba. I would say in Cuba, Davids are crushed by their Goliath dictator, but the Castro brothers say America is Goliath, and people there suffer because America imposed sanctions on Cuba.
The U.S. sanctions were designed to weaken the Castros, but in one way they became stronger. For half a century, the brothers have told their people a David and Goliath story, that only communism could save them from suffering imposed by the United States.
That was a slick PR campaign, and they talk about how can we prosper? We have this embargo, but there's no embargo around Cuba. They can buy stuff from Spanish-speaking countries nearby.
Yeah, I just don't believe that anybody believes that. Nobody in Cuba, maybe some tenured professors at Brown or something, but I don't think anyone really thinks that communism left unfettered from the United States would have made Cuba prosperous.
So with this Goliath is so nasty, you don't even have any libertarian think tanks in Cuba.
No, I mean, I look forward to the day when it'll be safe for an organization to openly criticize government policy in Cuba. We're not there yet.
Thank you, Brad Lips of the Atlas Network. 400 think tanks in 80 countries fighting for liberty. Coming up, how we libertarians are a lot like David. Unfortunately, when it comes to politics, I'm little David. I'm a libertarian. And in this country, Democrats and Republicans dominate. Libertarians often get stomped on. I get trashed by Bill O'Reilly.
I know you're a libertarian, but don't be a loon.
He mocks me if someone defends me.
There's some people on the other side, on the libertarian right, like John Stossel, who believes in legalization of not just pot, but everything. Okay.
Libertarians that want to smoke pot all day, they don't work.
Give me a break. O'Reilly's just one of many people who dismisses libertarians. I get clueless comments like that all the time. It's dismissal with a sneer. We Goliaths don't even have to argue with you libertarians. You're so fringe, loony. Well, excuse me, it was libertarians who wrote this, the Constitution that limits government and made America's success possible. And although Republicans and Democrats still get most of the votes, lately libertarian ideas have been winning. Big government Democrats just got kicked out of office.
We won.
And now Republicans, some of them anyway, propose ending subsidies to big business. Many also argue that if we want to fight a war, Congress must approve it. And 52% of Americans now say the United States should mind its own business internationally and let other countries get along the best they can on their own.
Gay marriage is becoming a reality in Florida.
The cheers and tears continue across the state as same-sex couples legally wed.
Florida just became the 36th state to legalize same-sex marriage. And the right of gay people to have sex with any other adult is now widely accepted.
The movement behind school choice continues to grow.
Forcing schools to compete for students is no longer a fringe idea. Private school choice programs now serve 300,000 kids, and charter schools and voucher programs serve more.
Voters in Alaska, Oregon, and the District of Columbia have approved legal recreational marijuana use.
Marijuana is now legal, or soon will be, in 4 states, plus Washington, D.C. And finally, welcome. Have a seat. Thank you. Entrepreneurs keep inventing cool new products and services, like ride-sharing companies, that evade government controls. And since customers like these services, they tell Goliath's regulators, back off. That's all good news. But let's face it, Goliath still rules and grows. On this program, we Davids will keep fighting him. That's our show. See you next week.